Hi, this is Naomi with Sword and Steel, and today we are checking out Canada, as shown in the Silver Bayonet expansion book, which is a war game of Napoleonic Gothic horror. Think the Napoleonic era, plus all of the horror creatures that you have heard about in horror stories, Wendigos and Yetis and vampires and werewolves, and any other skulking creature is available to fight or become in the Silver Bayonet, which is a skirmish game where you can use your own miniatures and just use the rule system to fight it off, either on a one battle basis or in a campaign that allows you to level up and gain equipment to better help you in future missions. And today we are looking specifically at Canada. If you're not that familiar with the bayonet, perhaps you have heard of Frostgrave or Stargrave. Joseph A. McCullough is the designer for both of these rule systems, so you'll find that the bayonet is slightly different but has a lot of similarities to those rule systems. So we've got fantasy with wizards, Stargrave has sci-fi, and then we have Napoleonic horror with the Silver Bayonet. But Ash Barker of the Guerrilla Miniature Games YouTube channel created this expansion for Canada, and since he is Canadian, I'm very curious what he'll cover of Canada in the Napoleonic era. When playing a Silver Bayonet campaign set in Canada during this period, you can freely create a specialist unit from the main rule book. These French Revolutionary and Napoleonic War veterans may have simply stayed together in colonial employ or working in the interests of a trading company. They may even have been seconded to the British Crown or United States forces during the war, or be employed by their governments for their own ends. You may also create 2 new units using one of the 4 nations, one of which is not actually a nation but would have had equivalent power and influence at the time provided here. These nations are the United States, Upper Canada, Lower Canada, and the trading companies. Now, I'm not certain about the USA, but in Canada, children learn about the trade, the fur trade specifically, when we're growing up in history lessons. In 1791, after the American Revolutionary War had created the United States and ended British rule in the former 13 colonies, the British Canadian colonies were divided into 2 distinct regions due to the influx of new people from the south. These United Empire loyalists desired a system of governments more in line with the British rule and settled in the Upper Canada region, which comprised most of modern southern Ontario, extending up to the regions of Georgian Bay and Lake Superior. Lower Canada comprised what is now the southern portion of Quebec, as well as Labrador and Newfoundland. The residents there continued to use the old French systems of governments, and the majority of the population located there still natively spoke French as a first language, alongside following those colonial customs. Because the colonies differed so much in governance and culture, they can be selected as individual nations for the purposes of the Silver Bayonet campaign. Both territories had imported their own superstitions and supernatural baggage to the New World from Europe, and both realized that, as the flames of war engulfed the world, some new supernatural sights were set on them. The same monsters and myths that had been battled in Europe were emerging here as well. The United States, on the other hand, says, newly minted in the American Revolutionary War, the United States borders the southern edges of both Upper and Lower Canada. Tension between the 2 British territories and this newly independent nation would reach a peak during the War of 1812. Most U.S. citizens, I'm not certain, are familiar with the War of 1812, and I'm afraid a fair bit of Canadians aren't that familiar with it either, other than they might have known the song. There is a song associated with 1812. But either way, The various and ongoing conflicts have solidified the harvestmen's supernatural presence, in part due to their ability to feed on the pain and suffering caused. With a firm foothold in the New World, they seek to raise tensions and rekindle war in North America to bring forth their powers in this new land. With the British already fully aware, the War of 1812 now came with its own spectral repercussions. The American military absorbed those specialist units already loyal to their new union and put them to work as they set their eyes on the Canadian colonies for the sake of their new nation. While the nations of Europe and the newly formed United States played out their political dramas in North America, the hand of industry had been quietly, or not so quietly in some cases, paving the roads, building and expanding forts and waterways, and generally doing all the heavy lifting of exploring and expanding what would eventually be the vast geographic nation of Canada. The Hudson Bay Company was originally founded by two French fur traders, but was backed by the English and eventually British governments and given their charter in the 17th century. This company was to eventually absorb all its rivals and dominate trade and exploration in northern North America for close to 300 years. However, during the Napoleonic Wars, the War of 1812, and the conflict with the Harvestmen, there were numerous powerful and dynamic trading companies at war with them. With their own private military forces and assets, companies like the Northwest Trading Company or the XY Trading Company would employ their own specialist units as new battles began to rage. The Upper Canada, the Lower Canada, the United States, and the trading companies have their people that you can join in, and there's also additional units, which is Dampier, Champion of the Faith, Discovery Serviceman, Highlander, Loup-Garou, Marine, Occultist, Veteran Hunter, and Werebear. And Loup-Garou is basically werewolf. So the new soldiers for this expansion is a Discovery Serviceman. It says, while technically an arm of the British Navy, the explorers of the Discovery Service were often funded by the trading companies. This was in a desperate effort to chart a passage through the Arctic to secure a vital trade route to Asia. So their attributes are expert climber and steady legs. They've got hand weapons, a blunderbuss, a pistol, and a shot bag. And then there's the Loup-Garou. These men were cursed with lycanthropy, or mad wolves, which is what Loup-Garou means, as the French would call them, would often have a hard time finding employment when their condition became known. It makes sense that a great many would journey to the New World, taking this affliction with them. Those with their affliction under control could often find a place in a specialist unit where their powerful wolf forms could do battle with the supernatural entities at large in the New World. And it has attributes are skin shift, wolf, allergy, silver and fire, quick heal, and then he has hand, weapon, and pistol, of course. The wolf form, he gains a whole bunch of different bonuses, but he can no longer use a firearm or investigate clue markers. And then a voyageur, attracted by the promises of adventure and held in massively high regard in local folklore, the majority of voyageurs were employed as guides and laborers in the fur trade boom of the 17th and 18th century. To be a voyageur, you had to be capable of carrying two 90-pound or 41-kilogram bundles of furs on a 5-mile portage at a minimum. These intimidating frontiersmen were both tremendously strong and massively in demand for their skill and ability. And there are still people today that do hunting as a living where they have to carry either half a moose or a minimum a quarter of a moose across land just to bring it home to their families for food. Woodsmen. Great forests cover vast areas of North America. The men who inhabit these forests are tough survivalists. I think you could imagine what a woodsman would be good at. While they often lack any formal military training, their skills at hunting, foraging, forest craft, and orienteering can often prove useful in specialist units. My dad would have been considered a woodsman. He could just do everything out in the wood. And boy, was he strong. Adventures in the North. So it says the following 5 scenarios represent common clashes between specialist units in Upper and Lower Canada during the Napoleonic Wars and the War of 1812, whether in royal or government employ or at the behest of one of the trading companies whose agendas dominated most power struggles in the region. They can be played out in order or at random by rolling on the Canada scenario table. And it says trade routes, the outpost, wings of sleep, the serpent's curse, and 1812 overture. When playing at any scenario, including the solo campaign presented later, so they have solo options for you, in the Canadian colonies, you may use the unexpected events table in the main rulebook as normal, with one exception. Unless playing the scenario 1812 overture, reroll any results of the artillery strike. Alternatively, you may use the unexpected encounters rules as normal, but roll on the Canadian colony's unexpected counters table presented here instead of the one in the Silver Bayonet rulebook. And I have got to read the unexpected encounters for Canada. Have to do that. On a 1, a demon, which is explained in the Silver Bayonet. A 2, grizzly bear, see page 53. 3, a timber wolf, aka a dark wolf. You would find that in the Silver Bayonet main book. The loup-garou, aka werewolf, from the Silver Bayonet. Bandit, from the Silver Bayonet. Cannibal, aka ghoul, from the Silver Bayonet. Revenant, from the Silver Bayonet. Moose, which makes so much sense because moose are incredibly dangerous depending on the time of year you see them. Harvestman agent, and spirit, aka ghost, from the Silver Bayonet. And I'm absolutely going to check out this. So it also says, in order not to spoil the details of the scenarios for those who wish to play them in order, and particularly for the solo campaign, here is a list of the models that will be featured throughout the missions in the supplement. It also includes all the models in the Canadian Colonies Encounters table, should you wish to use it. So again, you can use your own models for it. And he says, you need 1 bandit, possibly a deserter or lone hunter or trapper. You need 1 Baxbaxwallalandusque. Probably brutalized that name, but that's what it says. It's an ogre-sized monster completely covered in snapping mouths. A First Nations monster that we are definitely going to read more onto. 1 demon. An angry supernatural agent would work well for this. 4 to 6 ghouls, colonists driven to cannibalism. 3 ghosts, 1 grizzly bear, 1 harvestman agent, a sorceress agent of the harvestman, 1 harvestman assassin, a face-changing agent of the harvestman, 1 moose, 2 polar bears, 1 revenant, 1 timber wolf, 1 Semu, a river and lake monster that disguises itself as floating logs and trees. 1 Wendigo, a massive, emaciated supernatural horde driven by an endless hunger, and 1 werewolf. So, trade routes is the first one. And I guess I shouldn't reveal it. The outpost, not all of them anyway. The wings of sleep. The serpent's curse. And the 1812 overture. The Long Night, a solo campaign. So we're going to check out what the solo campaign is specifically. Various expeditions have attempted to navigate the endless ice floes, rocky shores, and long nights of the Arctic Circle. Those still there, when winter finally locks the waters in their icy grip, are forced to endure a terribly endless night. The ice slowly shifts around their ships, grinding the hull like a huge vice with its constant movement. As the ice forms beneath the hull, ships can start to list, and many were eventually broken as their starving and terrified crews shelter helplessly within. Campaign special rules. Hunger. The campaign uses all the solo play rules from the Silver Bayonet main book with the following additions. Hunger. At the beginning of the campaign, your unit has been marching across the ice on a reconnaissance mission for the ship's captain. Supplies are already low, and one of your party is complaining about their empty belly as you come within sight of the ship. Randomly select a unit remember to gain the hunger condition. Hungry models may not sprint and become distracted and weak-handed. Every time they take the reload action, roll d10. On a roll of 1, they drop their powder or otherwise spoil the load. The action is lost and the weapon remains unloaded. Now, this solo campaign is designed to be challenging and is best played through by an experienced Silver Bayonet unit. It is intended to be attempted by veterans of the supernatural Napoleonic Wars who have come into the employ of the Discovery Service due to their expertise. Or you can play it and realize just how deadly hunger and ice and snow can be, particularly when there are creatures out there that might want to eat you and are even hungrier than you are. Escape from the ice. The trail is quickly being obscured by the storm blowing across the ice from the northwest. As you make your way after the mutineers, you realize that there are shapes moving out amongst the jagged ice floes. You must race to follow them and secure the remaining supplies if you are to survive a journey off the ice and downriver to the mainland. If you cannot catch up with them in time, you will most likely starve before you can reach somewhere with enough wildlife to sustain your unit. And not only are you dealing with hunger, perhaps, because there's so little food out on the ice, you're dealing with snow blindness and freezing to death and absolutely losing your way because you don't necessarily have the equipment needed to guide you back in a particular direction. There are so many people who were lost. It's particularly something you learn in Newfoundland history anyway, how many people were lost on the ice trying to hunt for food. So including all of this ice and stuff is really nice. Open water. New monsters. Alright, so let's check out the new monsters. The Baxbaxwala The spirit has many names, ranging from cannibal at the north end of the world to he who first ate man at the mouth of the river. His massive eyeless form is bear-like but without fur and entirely covered in snapping jaws that chant back, 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 which is eat, eat, eat. So it must be back, back, wala, away. Much like hunger itself, he will always return to tempt living souls who are without food, but can be banished for a time. And then there's the grizzly bear. These large and aggressive bears are especially territorial when either with their young or when attempting to put on fat before hibernating through the long cold winters. Best left alone, they are sometimes hunted for food and their immensely warm pelts, and are often sent as emissaries or guards by the spirits that the colonists have disturbed in their often clumsy expansion. And then we also have the Harvestman agent. The lure of supernatural power and the ambitions of what riches the New World holds tempts many to follow the instructions of the dark powers rising in the Old World. Outfitted with objects and rituals to fulfill their goals, these agents sow chaos and discord wherever they go. The Harvestman assassin. The forces of the Harvestmen have learned the hard way how much damage specialist units can inflict on their machinations. In an effort to limit such damage, they have recruited mortal agents and trained them to infiltrate and eliminate specialist officers while pitting the forces of different nations against each other. These assassins are existential threats to the special units themselves. And then we have moose. Though not aggressive most of the year, the massive, gangly, and incredibly powerful moose was both a food source and an occasional hazard to exploration in Canada. Still is. You could still accidentally drive right into a moose, which are much bigger than deer. During a rut, males could easily trample and kill with their massive horns and immense weight, and you are not going to intimidate a moose in rut if you're on the road going towards it. Not even maybe. And the sheer size of these enormous cervines was shocking to European settlers. The polar bear. The great white Bears of the Arctic are the largest land-based predators in North America, often hunted for their meat by members of the Discovery Service. These same men could often run afoul of these apex predators as they clumsily made their way through the inhospitable Arctic. Now, most Canadians are not going to ever encounter a polar bear because they are much closer to the US border than they are to the Arctic temperatures where the polar bear wants to stay. But it can happen, particularly in the territories. Seamoose. The seamoose, or seamouse, I'm not certain how to pronounce that. The seamouse is a spirit of the water that causes snags and disruption to those natural paths through the wilderness, and become agitated and angry when feeling harassed by the passage of conflict. It can vary enormously in appearance, camouflaging itself from above as a cluster of debris such as a log jam or beaver house, also called a beaver dam, anyway, only to erupt as the yawning mouth of a bear, killer whale, or enormous frog from below. It can take the form of an amalgam of these things and can be terrifying to behold. He's allergic to fire, aquatic, damage reduction, large strong, master of cover, has lunge and swimmer, gaping jaws and crushing fins? And the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a malevolent spirit said to inhabit those who have engaged in cannibalism or other such despicable acts. The afflicted experience a ravenous and insatiable hunger that can never actually be sated, as they grow more gaunt and emaciated no matter what and how much they eat. They instead grow proportionally to the victims they consume and can become towering monstrosities of sinew and talons that will commit ever-escalating atrocities until they are destroyed in an attempt to sate their endless obsession with feeding. And then we've got new attributes. The lunge ability may be used for an aquatic creature to attack another figure not in water terrain. So aquatic, curse thrower, eyeless, fire starter, gate crasher, lunge, non-aggressive, swimmer, trample, and the credits. He says, I'd like to thank all of my Indigenous and First Nations hosts for their hospitality and friendship. Thank you as well to my friends and family for their support, and to my editor Phil for his endless patience. And the illustrator was Brainbug Design, based in Nottingham, UK. Did all of these fantastic artworks for the book. And that is it. So what do I think as a Canadian checking out the Silver Bayonet? Personally, I feel like I could have seen more how dangerous freezing weather and snowstorms could be. But you can only add so much to one book, and I very much liked it. I liked the addition of moose and how they're unimpressively dangerous. And I think bringing light some of the wars that were going on, bringing light to how important the trade companies were to Canada back in that time, it's nice. I'm happy with that, and I'm very curious. There certainly is unlikely to be miniatures for these creatures, so I'm curious what people will create to identify these monsters. Look at this guy. Oh, look at him. Yeah, so great, so great. That's the Backwallanuxiwe, which I think like a flesh golem would be a great one to create. Well, thanks for watching. Make certain to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Make certain to check out Ash Barker's YouTube channel if you'd like. He has so many games on there. He works so hard to make such a great channel. And I will catch you in the next video. Bye! I found this in a Wargames Illustrated magazine that North Star Miniatures has created some of the miniatures you might use for this expansion. And while you look at those, I just want to say Thank you very much to the patrons and YouTube members that support this channel. With times as they are, your support will be what keeps this channel going. So thank you. And if anyone would like to join Patreon or even just leave a tip for me to buy a new paint or paintbrush or model to review, it would be very much appreciated. In any case, happy hobbying!